All right. Thanks everyone who is joining us for this very special training on the Working Families Tax Credit. Before we dig into subject matter, I want to share a couple of housekeeping items with everybody who's joining us. um, those who have used Zoom before probably are aware that chat function is a wonderful feature that allows you to ask questions. It allows you to introduce yourself. It allows you to network with people. Please use the chat as you see fit. We will be hosting a Q&A section for this training, so please put your questions or comments in the chat. We will be answering questions towards the end of the training. Sometimes we have trainings where we answer them kind of sporadically throughout the training. This one, we're sharing a lot of information that is probably going to be answered. So we are going to answer them in one batch. Please just post your questions in the chat and I will hold on to them. If there's anything emergent, such as I can't hear or I can't see the slide or something like that, feel free to raise your hand. But if you have questions, just put them in the chat. Everyone who is here probably already notices that we are recording this training so it can live on our YouTube page and our blog. Those who have registered for this event are going to get that recording and that blog recap a couple of days afterwards. So just know that you're going to get a recap of this that you can then share with anyone you would like. If you don't want to be a part of our recording, go ahead and just stay to the chat and don't speak with your camera on in the Q&A session. This is a 2-hour training. I already said the Q&A is going to be at the end. I do have a couple of plugs for the coalition before I hand it over to our members. As a reminder or notice to folks who have never joined a Public Benefits Are Key training, this is a regular training series. We've hosted trainings on subjects like Medicaid, Medicare. We just did a great training on TANF and Work First with Patricia Bowen, who is joining us again. Social Security disability benefits. We're hosting an ABD HEN training, state disability benefits and housing supports, in a couple of weeks. For anybody who wants to register for future trainings, our link is in the chat. That takes you to our website to register for any that you would like. And then, like I said, our next upcoming training is on age, blind, and disabled benefits and housing and essential needs benefits. That is going to be on the 25th of the next month. Registration link is right there in the chat. The coalition also hosts monthly membership meetings, which is a space to attend what are kind of like mini trainings, hearing updates on relevant programs to folks in the homeless service field and other human services relevant topics. We also host advocacy opportunities for those who want to share your voice to improve conditions for everyone in our community. We're certainly going to be talking about that. It's relevant to the Working Families Tax Credit because before it was a program, it was an advocacy effort that people worked really hard on, including Marcy, who will be talking about that today. Our next meeting in April is going to cover crisis response around King County. We're going to be hearing from some North King County specific resources, as well as some all over King County resources through the Crisis Care Center levy and what interim supports people can access before crisis care centers start in like 2026, possibly. As a reminder, I already said this, everything lives on our YouTube. Please like our videos and join our YouTube. If anybody wants to hear more from us on a regular basis, you can sign up for our newsletters. I'm going to post that link in the chat as well. We send one email a week that mostly just recap things and share emergent news that are really helpful for service providers and advocates in the community. And then one last thing, if anybody has feedback about this training, we do take your feedback really seriously. We want these trainings to be valuable to service providers and community members who access public benefits. We want to hear from you. Please take our post-training survey. I will post this link a couple of times. And yeah, please be honest, either in this meeting or in that survey. And shortly, I would like to move over to our guests. But before I do, I just want to thank everybody for joining us for a really, I think, time-sensitive and valuable training on a pretty new tax credit for families and individuals in Washington state. It's very inclusive. It is something accessible by people who are not citizens, which is hard. Well, it's hard to access benefits, public benefits, if you are not a citizen, as a lot of us know. So this is a big deal. It's easy to access if you file your taxes. There are so many good things about this tax credit. And when I say tax credit, I do want to just like find that for those who are not as familiar with filing taxes, and our speakers will obviously dive into that, but that means free money for filing your taxes. So it really is a good deal for anybody who could use cash resources that has an income. So thanks for hearing my spiel. Thanks for sticking with me. I want to pass it over to our guests. We have Marcy Bowers from Statewide Poverty Action Network and Patricia Bowen from Solid Ground. Take it away, folks.
Patty, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself while I start sharing screen, and then I can introduce myself and kick us off?
Sure. I am Patricia Bowen. I am the Program Manager for Benefit Legal Assistance here at Solid Ground. So I will give kind of the legal or eligibility perspective on this tax credit slightly later after Marcy goes over what it is.
Excellent. Good morning, everyone. My name is Marcy Bowers. I use she, her pronouns. I'm with Poverty Action. Can actually somebody from the coalition give me some indication that you're, thank you, Patty, or from Patty, that you're seeing the screen the way I would want you to see the screen. If you've ever had a training or a presentation from me, you know that Zoom and I have a complicated relationship. So I'm counting on you all to tell me if something goes sideways on that. So as Tim mentioned, we're here to talk about the Working Families Tax Credit. It is an annual tax refund. I love Tim's framing of this is free money. It is really meant to be sort of a tax credit and acknowledgement that people with low incomes pay a higher portion of their income in state and local taxes than people with more resources, and meant to really help people as they live in an expensive high sales tax state. So I'm going to jump right in. Oh, if my screen will let me jump right in. Okay. So I think we don't really have time to do this, and you all did this in the chat. But if anybody wants to say a little bit about whether you got the tax credit and what you did with your refund, I think we can put a couple of those in the chat. This is sort of a training that is meant for kind of a broad set of audiences. But we also know that service providers, we've been working on wage equity for a while. We know service providers may qualify for this as well. So please feel free to put that in the chat if you access the credit and what fun thing you may have done with it. We will not be discussing this with the neighbor, but go ahead and put that in the chat. And we can kind of talk about that a little bit as we go forward.
Did you know?
Oh, geez. Sorry, I thought I got to push play on that. So we're gonna watch a quick little video about what this is. If I can get this to go back, no. Okay, well, we're gonna get started. And I'm gonna let somebody else introduce this idea so you can hear it in elevator pitch. Okay.
$1,200 every year if you work in Washington State. As a caregiver, my paycheck wouldn't cover my rent, but the Working Families Tax Credit helped with that. More than 170,000 families have already claimed their working family tax credit. Immigrants can get this credit too. Even if you're undocumented, visit wowtaxcredit.org to learn more.
Okay, so you got the little preview, little promo. Hopefully, maybe someone has seen that somewhere else besides the training that started playing before I was ready. So what is the tax credit? Working Families Tax Credit is an annual tax refund for Washingtonians. This is only for Washingtonians. More than 400,000 lower income households across Washington are eligible for up to $1,255 in a cash rebate. So what does that mean? So many of you are probably familiar with the Earned Income Tax Credit and the 2021 Child Tax Credit that people got. So tax credits are not just meant to reduce your tax rate, they directly put tax dollars back into your pocket. So one of my favorite things about this is that this is no strings attached money. You don't have to pay it back. You don't have to use it for a special purpose. You don't have to report how you use it. So, this is like a very, there are not all of that many options in state government or federal government or really any government to just hand out cash to people. Many of those things are complicated, and the best thing about tax credits is they are one of the less complicated versions of giving kind of mechanisms to give cash back to people. So how did we get to this place? So I'm going to talk about this and you will hear it come up, but this was a 13-year effort to get the Working Families Tax Credit passed and paid for in the state of Washington. I wish I could tell you I was magical and did it myself. Actually, I don't wish I could tell you that. That would be silly. But it was a large coalition that put a ton of work and energy and effort into it. A coalition of organizations that span economic and racial justice groups, immigrant rights groups, labor unions, service providers, DV advocates, and many more. And our hope really was to get cash back in the hands of people who need it. But my feeling about the coalition and why I bring it to here is partly it was a lot of work, and but also we think that we did a good job making the tax credit as inclusive as possible because we had such a broad coalition, and so everybody was able to share kind of what their priorities were in order to make this as accessible and inclusive as possible. So Tim referenced that this is available to immigrant families if people file with an individual tax ID number or an ITIN. This is available to them. So that was something, for example, that was important to all of us, but was really critical for us to have immigrant rights advocates and organizations as part of the coalition to really help us understand what that needed to look like in order to pass a strong policy. So we all wanted to come together and make sure that people who are impacted by Washington's upside down tax code receive cash. If anybody and your organizations are interested in continuing this effort, of course, we welcome you if you share that goal, to participate in the body of work. I think one of the things that was interesting about this is there was a lot of people and a lot of organizations that participated, and everybody had a slightly different reason for participating. Some people were really interested in the tax code. Some people were like, no, we just got to get cash to people. Some people said, hey, we're really interested in making sure that this is something that's accessible for people as they attempt to leave domestic violence situations. A lot of people kind of came to this from this is really an economic and racial justice issue. These are the ways that racism creeps into all of our policies, or sort of underpins our policy system because it's so embedded in our tax code. So that was the broad goal, was fix the tax code, or start fixing it anyway, and get cash to people. It's kind of the broad set of problems we were trying to solve. So it was over a decade. The nice way to say it was over a decade. It was 13 years, let's be honest. The original tax credit passed in 2008. Fun fact, there's a picture of like baby Marcy, organizer, in the photo, in the bill signing photo from that. And then it was such a joy to come back around and be no longer baby Marcy in the 2021 bill signing with totally different legislators, totally different governor. I think I'm the only person who's in both photos, which is kind of a funny place to be, but it took a long time. Our tax code is deeply troublesome and very, very, very entrenched. There's a lot of interests who are very entrenched in keeping tax rates down for people who have a lot of money. So the underlying policy passed in 2008, but never had funding attached to it until 2021. So there was a lot of work. We had a whole bunch of people testifying. We did videos. We had maybe the best prime sponsor around. And it was amazing to get it all done, but also right in the middle of COVID, this is early 2021, the governor said, you know what, this is so important that we're gonna do a big in-person bill signing. So this picture down at the bottom left with the governor is the biggest bill signing, I think, at that point during COVID. So not the biggest bill signing ever, I'm not trying to say that, but it was, I think, the first time he said, okay, yeah, we'll do a big one for you all. So we had an outdoor bill signing and magically Seattle's weather cooperated with us for that. Okay, one more. Oh, see, this one lets me start it. So I'm on my own. Okay, so we're gonna watch one more video because this was a big celebration.
This year, Washington State started a program to give working people up to $1,200 a year back on their taxes. And our coalition of over 50 organizations is busy doing outreach and organizing to help people across Washington apply for their tax credit. This money is already helping people pay for emergencies, get caught up on rent, and buy school supplies for their kids. So many people spread the word about the credit, and so far, almost $90 million have gone out to more than 180,000 families across our state. People even recorded videos in over 15 languages to encourage immigrant communities in Washington to apply. And we showed up to share the impact of this new credit with elected officials and with the media. Not only that, we also advocated in the legislature to improve and expand the credit. And because of the advocacy of so many organizations and community members, we won legislative changes that mean families now have 3 years to claim their credit, and survivors of domestic violence will more easily be able to apply. Thanks to you, Washington is a better place for working.
Did you
Oh,
know
geez.
that you can get up to $1,200?
I have a quick question about those videos. They were a little bit hard for me to hear. I'm
Okay.
wondering if there is a space that a person could choose to watch them later. And I can definitely like post them in the blog if folks just want to like share a video with their community members or just like on social media or whatever to get the word out.
Yes, I'm sure I can get the actual videos. Clearly, videos in trainings are not my friend.
Sorry, it really is.
That I got them to play it all is the small miracle of my day. Okay, so who can benefit? I love this because we think of taxes as like an adult grown-up sort of thing, but it is not just adults. It is kids as well. So there's 1 in 4 kids in Washington, or about 573,000 kids, live in households that can benefit from the credit. And we know that when people have access to resources, they do better, it turns out. So for kids, this shows up in higher math and reading scores in elementary and middle school, higher likelihood of graduating from high school, higher birth weights for pregnant mothers, So the impacts are stronger in families with young children and for families with the lowest incomes. That probably feels pretty obvious to most of you. But sometimes we need data in the legislature in particular. Sometimes we need data to prove the things that we hear from community members all the time. And the data is quite clear that when people have access to more resources, particularly with few strings attached, few or no strings attached, they do better. And this shows up not just for the parents and what they're able to do with their families, but this shows up in broad outcomes for students and kids. So I already went over this a little bit. Washington's tax code is inequitable. People with the lowest incomes pay 13.8%, while the wealthiest pay just 4.1% of their taxes. And the working families tax credit alone is not going to fix this. We're going to have to do a whole lot of work. The capital gains tax also helps with this. I think this is my next slide. Oh, not yet. Oh, yes. And basically because we did in 2021, both the capital gains tax and the working families tax credit, we are now not the worst in the nation, y'all. We have stepped up to number 49, and we can all be really proud of that. But I think, you know, the slide really says it pretty well. This is a both cause for a celebration. We have moved, we can see actual progress, but it's still a call to action, because who wants to say they're number 49? It's certainly not me. That we are now only better than Florida on our tax code being progressive. So again, but this is for the first time. We are now not in dead last. We are now number 49, trailed by a small margin by Florida. So we still have work to do, but it's nice to know that something we did has made a difference on something as broad as, are we the worst? No, the answer is no, we are not the worst, but we still have a long way to go. Okay, so why cash matters. Again, this feels like I'm preaching to the choir here. I realize you all know these things. It directly supports people who need the most help. It gives people freedom to choose how to meet their basic needs, has an outsized benefit for low-income communities, communities of color, Black, Native families, right? Like, we know all these things are big problems in our systems and structure, and there's not that many things that can really address all of that, frankly, that legislators, governments, et cetera, are willing and able to do with the kind of political will that they have. So it's a big deal when they get this stuff done, and we should be proud of it. Again, this is just a little bit more detail. Black, Indigenous, and people of color make up 36% of eligible households in Washington, in comparison to making up 25% of the population. So you can sort of see, like, on a negative side, that means that people of color are more likely to live in poverty than their white counterparts in Washington. But in a case like this, it also makes them more likely to be eligible for benefits, which means that the outreach we've done and we've been trying to do needs to be commensurate with that and be specifically targeted to make sure that we're reaching people because of this disproportionate impact. Okay, so how's it going? I was excited to give you all this training, I think like right around launch day last year, and we get some opportunity to report back. So as of December, there was 190,417 applications received. So almost half of the people, which is not bad for a first year. The state gave out $115 million in cash to people, and nearly 247,000 children have benefited from the refunds that went out. So we did a little bit more. We wanted to continue. We've been working to continue making this more accessible to people. So one of the things that we did during not the most recent legislative session, but the legislative session in 2023 was allow people to have 3 years to claim their credit. So if you didn't know that you were eligible for this, or you had never heard about it in year one, that doesn't mean you missed your opportunity to claim this for the 2022 tax year. It means that you can claim it if someone claims their taxes or does their taxes this year, realizes they're eligible this year, they can claim this year or the 2023 credit and the 2022 credit. Same deal will apply in 2024. They'll be able to claim the 2022, 2023, and the 2024 credit when they're filing their taxes next spring. Also, because Washington doesn't have an income tax, we'll get into this a little bit more later, the application process is a little bit different and unique. It's not tied directly to your federal, the application is not tied to the federal tax filing. You have to file your taxes and have your tax returns available, but it is a separate application, which means you don't have to do this only during tax season. This is what I'm getting at, is that if you realize in July, well after tax season is over, that, hey, when you did your taxes, they said you were eligible for something, you forgot about it, you can go back and apply in July or August or September or whenever for those credits for up to 3 years. So really trying to make sure that people have every opportunity possible to claim the credit, especially, I mean, this will continue forever, but especially in these first few years where people don't know about it yet, where people are sort of skeptical about, I'm sorry, the state just wants to give me cash and I just have to tell them how much money I made and how many kids I have. I don't know. So really trying to make it accessible for as long as possible for folks. So that is good news. Anybody you're working with or yourself, you can still claim last year's credit as well as this year's. Okay, so who's applying for this? Like, who benefits? And who still needs to apply? So Adams County is like, they're like really going hard for it. The 81% of the people eligible in Adams County went for it and got it, which is incredible. We don't often see those kind of rates in rural communities. Yakima did a pretty good job as well with 63%. In Okanagan, we're at 50%. King County is a little bit more reflective of a large population center where we're at about 40% claimed out of 95. Nearly 100,000 eligible households. So we still have work to do right here in King County. So I'm hoping you all can help let your program participants, your residents, all the folks you're working with know that they are likely to be eligible for this. Okay, you all get to stop hearing from me for a few minutes. I'm going to turn this over to Patty. And Patty, if you could just like give me like as we move to the next slide, and I'm happy to move your slides for you.
Sounds good. So as Marcy is explaining, this is a great program. However, how do you know if you actually are eligible for this program? And that's what we're going to go over next. So if we can go to the next slide, we will go over it. So there's 4 basic criteria to know if you are eligible to receive this credit. The first is that you do have to be a resident of Washington State. So what that means is you have to have spent at least 50% of the calendar year in the state of Washington. So at least 183 days. They don't have to be consecutive. So if you have, you know, migrant work where you are out of the state for some months, you come back, you're visiting family, etc., that is totally fine. It is the totality, it's the total number of days that you are in Washington State has to be over 183. So as long as that's the case, you are a Washington State resident and you meet this first criteria. The second is that either you or your spouse, if you're filing jointly, have to file a federal tax return. And we'll go into that slightly later. You don't have to be a US citizen and have a social security number. You do have to file taxes. The third being that either you have to have a child or a dependent child, or you have to be between the ages of 25 and 65. So if you are younger than 25, older than 65, but you have a child, you're still eligible. If you don't have child dependents, you are limited by that age range. The final criteria is that you have to have made at least $1 in income. That doesn't have to be a employment contract. You can be gig work, you can do Uber Eats, you can do DoorDash, you know, something like that. You can do it one time and have, you know, your $17 income. That is income. It is taxable. You can file it with that and get the full benefits from this program just from filing that one income, so to speak. We can go to the next slide. So this breaks down kind of how, what the eligibility requirement is, because there is an income eligibility. Obviously, if you are out there making millions of dollars, you don't need a tax benefit to come back to you to compensate you. However, there are, as we saw, about 250,000 people that do in the state of Washington meet these requirements. So how do you know if it's you? Here's the chart. So if you're between the ages of 25 and 65 and you don't have children dependents, you would fall under that 0 children or relatives to claim. And then depending on how you're filing, you see your corresponding household cap. So that's how much money you can make up to and be eligible. Similarly, if you have 1 child dependent, 2 child dependents, 3, etc., the breakdown is as follows, and these are available on the website as well. We can go to the next one. And so in addition to knowing what that cap amount is knowing how much money you're eligible for. So there is a maximum credit amount that you can be given for each the number of qualifying children. For example, if it's just you and no children, the cap amount you can receive is $315. If you have 3 or more children, the cap amount goes up to $1,255. There are some specific situations where you might go under that $315 as an individual, and it can go as low as $50. If you have questions about the specifics, I will let Marcy answer this for you. If we can go to the next slide. So this is what I was talking about earlier, is you do not have to have a social security number to be able to get this benefit, and that is pretty unique. Very few benefits allow you to be qualified for them unless you have a social security number, unless you can prove that you are a Washington state or a United States citizen. So this is an amazing kind of outlier, is that if you have an ITIN, you are also eligible to file. We go to next slide. So there's a variety of reasons why you might have an ITIN instead of a social security number. It can be undocumented immigrants. It can be students here on student visas. It can be the spouse or children of people who are employed here on employee visas. But they also give out ITINs to survivors of domestic violence who, for safety reasons, need a alternative means by which to identify other than their social security number. Next slide. So, like I said, unfortunately, people filing with ITINs are often excluded from other sorts of benefits like unemployment insurance or the earned income tax credit. However, with this program, you are eligible. The same criteria that we already went over is applied to people with social security numbers and people with ITINs. And about 10% of the people who received the credit already for last year were people filing with ITINs. So that's awesome to see that this is already being utilized and already having that effect in the community. Next. So sounds great. I qualify, now what? You can apply a number of ways. You can just file by yourself. So there's a bunch of different options for free tax prep services. Most of them have this application integrated. If they don't, you do want to check to make sure. But if you want to make sure that this is eligible and integrated, there is a secure online portal as well. The link is here. It'll be in the slides once they're shared with you as well. I see people in the chat sharing additional services as well. That is awesome. If you know of other free and accessible services, please share them in the chat. We are all for sharing information, not paying to get a tax credit. So we can go to the next slide. So the things you need for this are your tax documents. So your 1040. If you have, any source of income, which you do need to get this benefit, it'll be sent to you more likely than not by your employer. If you can't find it, you can contact that employer and have them send it to you. Even the gig economy work, they'll usually email it to you or send you, in the snail mail if that's what you opt in for. You just need that paperwork that shows what your income was for that year, and it just has to show that you made at least $1. You also need your social security number or your ITIN so that you can be identified as a filer. And then sometimes to verify your identity, you will need a government issued photo ID. So it can be a driver's license, it can be an ID, what have you, that just shows your name in connection with that filing. We can go next. So like Marcy was talking about, amazing news is if you're just hearing about this for the first time and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I would have been eligible the last 2 years. I've already filed for this 2023 tax year and I didn't even know about it in 2022. You can still apply. And you can still apply in 3 months if it occurs to you in 3 months that, oops, I flagged that for myself and I forgot to do it. So you can go on, again, workingfamiliescredit.wa.gov. Fill out the application, and for the year 2022, you have until the end of 2025 to apply. So you have 3 years look back for each year to make sure that you are getting that benefit if you qualified during that tax season. Next. Another additional great program or piece of this program is the fact that it is accessible. The online application itself is only accessible in English and Spanish. However, they do have a call center support with Spanish and Vietnamese speakers available live, and with hundreds of other languages available with interpreter services over the phone. So you just call into that program, you let them know the language that you speak. They will get an interpreter on the phone with them and connect you with somebody to support you through if needed. Next. They also have paper copies of the application that are available in 12 additional languages in addition to English. So if you are a native speaker of one of these languages, if this is your preference for filling those out, you can fill out the paper application without needing to call in and speak with somebody. You speak another language, just call into that program, they can help you through it. Next. Okay, so we're going to go into frequently asked questions. Hopefully in this part, we will answer the questions that are percolating in the back of your mind. If we don't answer them, we will then read through the chat, answer additional questions, and go from there. And Marcy and I will just share going back and forth. Let's go to the first question.
Okay, great. We are plowing through this. This is amazing. So we'll have lots of time for questions. So this was a question that comes up frequently, particularly for folks who are not US citizens, although it's probably a good question for everyone. So is my information safe? So under Washington state law, your information and that of your children will not be shared with any other state or federal agency, including ICE. So this is actually very, very strict. There's some things we were hoping to do around making eligibility simpler. But the reason that it has stalled so far is because the Department of Revenue can't talk to DSHS about who's already eligible. So this is a good thing for privacy even if it causes a little bit of a challenge around streamlining eligibility. But you can feel quite confident, I promise you, that your information is not being shared back and forth. So, another concern I think that comes up for people on public benefits is, if I report this income to Department of Revenue, are they going to turn around and report it to DSHS? They will not be doing that. So your information is safe there as well.
Okay, so how will I get my refund? So unlike your federal tax return where you can opt in and just have it deposited straight into your bank account, this is separate. Completely separate program, completely separate way of getting that money back. And you will receive it either, and it's up to you, via direct deposit or by mail check. And just to put my lawyer hat on for a second, I strongly advise that you have that check mailed to you for the specific reason that getting this tax return cannot opt you out of other public benefits. But if you have it on direct deposit and it goes into your account, it could push you over a resource threshold. So if you're close to that, say $12,000 resource cap in your bank account, and you have this direct deposited in and it pushes you over, you could lose benefits. So it's best to have the control in your own hands, get that physical check, deposit it when it makes sense for you, and making sure that you are still compliant with that that benefits threshold amount. So my 2 cents, you can do whatever you would like. If you know that you are well within your resource limits, do direct deposit. But just to flag for you that that is one thing to consider in the back of your mind. And so just about when you'll receive it, it does fluctuate. And that's kind of one of the reasons I'm opposed to direct deposit too, is you can't know, oh, it's going to deposit on this day, and I know my income on that day or my resources on that day will be within the threshold. It can take anywhere from 60 to 90 days. So because of that, it does give you more control to get that physical check in the mail. You can decide when to deposit that check, and you can hold on to it for a bit until you deposit it. So just to flag that.
Okay, Patty touched on this. Are these public benefits? Will this impact any opportunity to receive a visa or a green card? No. Tax credits are not considered public benefits under the U.S. Citizen and Immigration Services Public Charge Rule. So I think we talked a lot about public charge a few years ago. This does not apply to public charge. So people can also feel secure knowing that this will not harm their chances to become U.S. citizens as well.
So is this credit automatic when I file my taxes, or do I need to apply? So this is not automatic. You do have to apply. Even if you file your taxes and you go through all of that and you get your federal tax return, that is completely separate from this process. Unless you opt in during that process specifically for this credit, you won't be considered for this credit. So if you are doing it through a third-party tax preparer, you need to make sure that you're opting into this. If you've already done your taxes or your third-party tax preparer doesn't offer this, you need to submit a separate application for this tax credit to make sure that you are utilizing and getting both.
Again, back on the benefits. This does not impact your SNAP or TANF benefits, with the exception of what Patty shared around being careful about the resource limit. So this is not reported as income to DSHS. It will not impact SNAP or TANF. That is one of the great things about tax credits, is they are basically a credit on taxes that you've already paid. They are not taxable income. So they will not impact benefits like TANF or SNAP.
So part of what we talked about was there are 2 qualifications, either between the age of 25 and 65, or that you have a qualified child. What does that mean? If you're claiming for a child on your taxes, they count as a qualified child. So if you have the right to claim them on your taxes outside of this program, they count towards this program as well. They do have to be under the age of 19, or if they're still in school, they can be up to the age of 24, or any age if they are categorized as disabled and you are their caregiver. Your child must also have a social security number or an ITIN in order for you to claim them. It can be either, you just need to put it on the form to show that they are, a real person. And you can apply for an ITIN for your child if needed while you are filing your taxes. So if you go to file this, realize, oh my gosh, I don't actually have an ITIN for my child, you can do it at that time. Once you get the ITIN, fill out the rest of this working family tax credit form.
Another benefit of having 3 years to claim the credit.
Yes, you are not under the same time crunch as file your taxes within 3 months or else.
Big plug for United Way of King County for free tax prep help. So they have been a member of the coalition really all the way through this process, have helped us think through some of these like wonky tax questions, and continue to be a great resource around free tax prep. So they have included this in their training for volunteer tax prep folks. So they should have the ability to help and answer questions. So that's been fully integrated into the United Way of King County's tax prep program. So it doesn't just mean that the volunteers can help you, but United Way of King County can also help with broad questions about like, wait, what is this? What do I do? Anything that you think of well after this training, you're of course welcome to reach out to Patricia or me about, but you can also, if it's about taxes, you probably want to ask them, not me, to be honest.
So like we said, do I have to pay to do my taxes? No. Please do not pay to do your taxes unless you have something else going on that is so complicated as to require a tax professional to help you outside of those programs. There are plenty of online free resources to help with your taxes. One of them is freetaxexperts.org. I believe the next one also says that you can file these taxes yourself as well. And if you'd like to file them yourself without talking to anybody else, you think, you know, I've done this before, I know what I'm doing, you can also go to myfreetaxes.com to do it as well. And it does have this integrated.
Okay, what about other places? What if you don't live in King County? What if you're serving folks outside of King County? So the IRS has a VITA volunteer income tax assistance, I believe is what VITA stands for, search tool. So you can, IRS has many complicated web pages, but this one's actually pretty good where you can look up and find help for free tax prep. AARP also does free tax prep. And I know everyone on this call is familiar with 211. They also have tax prep resources as well for outside of King County.
So once you've applied for the refund, or quite honestly, if you don't remember if you applied for the refund, you can check to see where your refund is or to make sure you've done it correctly by going either on the DOR's website or by calling their helpline. The number's on the screen. It's 360-763-7300. We do also advise that if you opt in to have that check snail mailed to you, that you keep an eye on your mail. Also, just in case they accidentally didn't notice that you asked for that direct deposit and they snail mail it to you anyway, keep an eye on your mail. You want to make sure that it is sent to you, it is not stolen, that you get it into your bank within the correct amount of time, etc. You also may receive letters from them if they go to do your refund and they realize that there's actually additional information that they need. So they will be communicating with you via snail mail if they need any sort of follow-up information. You can also see it flagged as having been sent to you or not on that DOR's website as well. People last year received their credit in an average of 50 days. So even though we say it can take up to 60 to 90 days, the average is actually less than that. So keep an eye on your mailbox. If you don't have a safe mailbox to send it to you, you can have it sent somewhere else instead, but just make sure that it's somewhere that you are accessing and that you are checking.
One thing I will add here too is and Patty mentioned this, on the Where's My Refund tool, this would probably be the preferred place to check and see if you don't remember if you applied. I recommend the Where's My Refund tool before simply applying again. Simply applying again will create a duplicate form, which causes a little bit of an issue on the back end that most people don't want to deal with. Having DOR think you're trying to claim the credit twice. So if you don't remember, or if you said, okay, I think I did, but maybe I did it for last year, or did I do it for this year? I encourage you to check the Where's My Refund tool before just simply trying to apply again. Some other benefits programs are like, you can apply as many times as you want and it's all under one number and everything is fine. DOR is not that setup at this point. So you want to try the Where's My Refund tool instead of just simply applying again.
Okay,
Oh.
so if going through this made you so riled up, you're like, this is amazing, we need to do more, how can you stay involved? You can use the eligibility tracker to check for your eligibility. Find it at workingfamilycredit.wa.gov. Tell a family member, tell a friend, tell your neighbors. Like we showed on that map, there are a lot of people, almost 250,000 people in this state who are eligible, and of that, only about half are actually applying as of right now and getting that benefit. So there's over 100,000 people who should be getting and are not getting yet that benefit. Share the information. It can't hurt. You don't know who's eligible, and you don't know who knows somebody who's eligible. Share it out, like Facebook status. I don't know, for those of you still on Facebook. You can also sign up for updates from WashingtonTaxCredit.org. They will let you know if there are any other upcoming changes, what those deadlines are, what access and options are. And the fourth, which I will definitely let Marcy go into, is advocate. So advocate for additional changes.
I know. You can't come to a training with Marcy, really, or with anybody from the coalition and not have some sort of press for advocacy. So the legislature has done an amazing amount of work getting us to this place. They've been strong champions. This has wide bipartisan support. But we still have more work to do. The things that we've been working on over the last legislative session is making this available to anyone over the age of 18, regardless of whether you have a child. So we know that there are single adults between the ages of 18 and 25 who would benefit from this credit. We know that there are seniors who are working past the age of 65 who could benefit from this credit. And the only reason they don't qualify is because of the age restrictions. So we could fix that. The legislature could fix that, but they need to hear that it's really important. They need to hear that youth aging out of foster care who don't have a kid can and should benefit from this credit. They need to hear that working seniors can and should benefit from this credit. So you can tell them that anytime you want. You can tell them that today. You can send them a quick email. You can tell them that, oh, I don't know, when they ask for your vote during this election cycle, you can tell them that you would really like to see this get done. And of course, you can tell them that all the way through the 2025 legislative session. But they need to know that this is important. We can and should do better on our tax credits. We are still number 49 in the nation, and we could still do better. There's 48 other states standing in our way to being number one. So there's work to do. And we want to see all adults be able to access this. So that is where we are going. I'm just going to keep going, Patty, if that's okay. So again, there's many ways to advocate once the legislative session starts. You can testify, you can send more emails, make phone calls. I'm a big fan of the legislative hotline number. It's like there's like a live person that answers. You don't even like push buttons to like go through a weird operating system. A live person answers, big fan. You can talk to the media or share your story. The coalition can help do a letter to the editor campaign. We've done a number of trainings on that over the years. There's opportunities, I think, around the upcoming tax day to send a letter to the editor to let them know, like, hey, on this tax day, like, we need to make sure that everybody knows and remembers that people can claim the working families tax credit. So all sorts of things you can do. There's lots of things that might be right in your comfort zone and you should do those things. And there might be things that are a little bit of a stretch, but it takes a stretch for all of us to get big things done. So encourage everyone to take one little stretch outside their comfort zone. Maybe if you're normally a texter and emailer, like call that hotline and talk to the actual folks and leave messages for your legislators. I like to think about doing one thing that's beyond my comfort zone every time I'm advocating, just to be sure that I'm pushing myself the way I'm pushing legislators to go beyond their comfort zone. And I'm happy to just wrap us all the way up. So here's some websites and some links for where you can access more information, where you can get your refund, where you can get some tax prep information. Again, all of these slides, I believe, I can easily make available. The presentation is there, but all of this stuff is available. One thing I know you can also get at the wataxcredit.org website is if you work in a place where you're like, man, I didn't know that much about this, I should be sharing this. You can order posters or little informational postcards about how to access the credit as well. So you can have those in your office. Those are also available via the Department of Revenue website. I think the coalition ones are cuter. So I prefer those personally. But then again, opportunities to actually access tax prep resources as well. Okay, now we have time for questions. We have given you a ton of information, and now is your turn to ask us for more. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can see you all. I can figure out how to do that quickly.
Amazing. That was super helpful. I feel like over the past year, y'all have identified even more resources to make this process easier. And I'm really glad we got to share this today. Before we dip into questions, I do just want to second Marcy's point about advocacy. If you may or may not know, the Coalition on Homelessness is an advocacy organization. We are here, of course, to share information with people, especially providers and high needs community members, to make their experiences a little bit easier. And we know that advocacy is often the way to do that. And because of that, we are here to support you if you are newer to advocacy. Our community policy manager is very helpful. All of us are very helpful in getting you ready. Our policy manager, Helly, is not on this call today, but she or others who are with the coalition are always here to talk to you if you are curious about, like, oh my goodness, what does the legislative session look like? Like, how do I actually make a difference in doing this? Who's my legislator? Like, how can I go to Olympia if I want to? We are all here to answer those questions. I'm going to put my email in the chat if anybody has any of those one-off questions or want to know how to get involved with more advocacy. Jody just posted in the chat a reminder to sign up for emails if you want that information. You will certainly know when it is the legislative session and time to advocate for things like the Working Families Tax Credit, eligibility expansion, and other things. So just stay tuned there. If anybody has questions that want to say them aloud, feel free to raise your hand, feel free to unmute and just speak. I do have a couple of questions that popped up in the chat that I'd like to raise. Diane asked earlier, what if a person works as a 1099 or self-employed or entrepreneur? And I think, Diane, what you're asking is if a person is eligible and would go through the same application process as others who would get income from employment. Please let me know if that misrepresents.
That's what I'm asking. No, that's what I'm asking.
Perfect.
Perfect. So yes, you go through the same process as long as you, again, are making and paying yourself at least $1 in wages. You go through the same process. You would just be submitting your 1099 instead of your 1040 at the time that you're applying for that working family tax credit.
So just to add on to that, any income that anybody uses, you can file any income like 1099s, 1040s, etc., that you would use to file taxes. Again, because there's a requirement to file your federal taxes and include your tax return in the state process, anything you would use to file your federal taxes would count as eligibility for this.
And if I haven't claimed in previous years, I can still claim, because last year I was told I didn't get nothing because I didn't make enough, but you're telling me I only need $1. And I'm like, I made that. Yes.
So you would still need to file for 2022's tax year. You would still need to file your federal income taxes. but then you could claim, so you would file your 2022 taxes and your 2023 taxes. And then you could upload both of those returns to the state system and get the credit for both years.
Okay, I already did 22, so
Okay, great.
I can just use those. I just got to do this year's and then upload it into the system.
Yeah, but you
Wow,
should be able
that's-
to apply for both at the same time.
And even possibly the year before that?
It was not open yet the year before that. So 2022 is the first tax year that this was available.
Okay, well then I should be able to get it for both years because I heard about it last year, and when I went to H&R Block and tried to get them to help me, they told me no. They're just like, nope, there's nothing for you. You didn't make enough. But I was like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, this is, I think, Diane, you're bringing up a couple things, and we have the time, so I'm just going to dig into it. The first thing is, you know, Department of Revenue did their best to reach out to kind of these paid tax preparers. So think, oh my gosh, why can't I think of the one that's online that everybody uses?
TurboTax?
TurboTax, thank you. Right, TurboTax, they reached out to H&R Block, and they got kind of a mixed response about whether those preparers were planning to incorporate this. So I think, for example, H&R Block said, thanks, but no thanks. We're not going to do anything about that. And I think TurboTax said, we're not really going to integrate it fully into the thing, but we'll put up a pop-up that says you might be eligible, go to DOR. But declined, even though they're probably the biggest tax preparer system, but they declined to sort of fully integrate it in. I'm hopeful that this will change over the next couple of years as the credit gains traction and people know about it, and it will be sort of a thing that they really can't decline to do forever. But it was a bit of a mixed bag, which is why another reason, partly we don't want people to have to pay, but it's another reason that we've been really kind of plugging these free tax prep resources like United Way King County and the VITA sites, because they know about it and they are integrating it into their programming around how they support people to do their taxes. So that was one thing. And I think the other thing, oh, go ahead, Diane.
I was just going to say, personally, I used United Way last year, and for anybody coming out of a DV situation, if you're still married to that person, United Way cannot help you if you're filing separated.
So, okay, Diane, you are bringing all the questions. I love this. Okay. So in 2023, when people were applying during the tax year 2023, you could not claim the working families tax credit if you were married filing separately. That, along with the 3-year look back, passed during the 2023 legislative session. So this year, you should be able to work through the married filing separately. Last year, that was not available, but because of a policy change last year, it should now be available. So I'm hopeful that that is a different experience for folks this year. That was an eligibility change that we made in the 2023 legislative session. The other thing, oh man, I lost it again. The other thing I wanted to flag is many states that do state level earned income tax credits, their eligibility is directly tied to the federal earned income tax credit, or EITC. One of the places where Washington's eligibility changes substantially is this dollar of income. For the federal program, you have to earn a little bit more, and then it's sort of like, I'm literally giving you what the graph looks like. You have to earn a little bit more, and the more you earn, the more you can get in the earned income tax credit. And then there's sort of a stable amount, and then it kind of tapers off at the end. But in Washington, you get the full amount at $1 of income. And that is something where it's a big departure from the way the federal program works. So if you're talking to a tax prep person like H&R Block, who's kind of opted out of working on the working families tax credit, they may tell you that you're not eligible for the EITC, and they might not know anything about the working families tax credit to be able to, and you may end up with information that makes it sound like if you're not eligible for the EITC, you're not eligible for the tax credit, but especially at the lowest end of the income spectrum, like that's not going to be true because you only need $1. So I think, Diane, your question about they said I didn't earn enough to get it, That might be true on the federal program, but that's not true of the state program.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, thanks for all the good questions.
Awesome. Yeah, that was a great, great couple of questions there. I do have one other question that popped up in the chat from Kristen. Can folks count their children for the working families tax credit if they are not claimed on their taxes?
Unfortunately, no, because they are looking at your federal tax return. So if you, I'll use my own parents as an example. After my parents split up, they took turns claiming me on their tax credits or on their tax returns. So my mom would have been eligible the years that she claimed me. My dad would have never been eligible, but my mom would have been eligible the years she claimed me, but not the years that my dad claimed me. So because it's based on what you file federally, if you didn't claim your kids, then you cannot claim them. Or if you didn't claim them on your federal returns, you can't claim them on your state working families tax credit application.
Awesome. Another good question. Does anyone else have questions, either about access or any aspects to filing taxes, eligibility? How do folks get involved with future working families tax credit advocacy? Feel free to unmute and just speak or raise your hand or go off in the chat.
I already do some advocacy work for domestic violence, child welfare and stuff like that, and CPS. But I wouldn't mind crossing over into some of this area, but I think I could probably talk to somebody, maybe not in this Zoom call, but I'd be curious to know a little bit more about any advocacy work on I heard that they were pushing to try to come up with a wage through DSHS or through even a return of some sort for those who are helping take care of special needs or disabled, things of that nature. And I heard they were looking for people to advocate or to help speak out on some of those things. And I don't know if you guys are covering any of that, but obviously I follow you guys through email and stuff. So I could be getting groups mixed up.
Thank you for subscribing to our emails. I'm glad that you were connected. I am not super familiar. I mean, is that like a kinship caregiver type program or I'm not
Yes,
super.
it is like a kinship caregiver type program.
Okay. I'm not specifically aware of an advocacy push. Were you saying to raise the wage or to like establish like a funding?
Establish a funding. Other states are already have this in place. Other states already have it in place. Washington does not have it in place yet. But there does prove working with those in homeless, those who are coming out of DV. Even in my particular case, I came out of a DV situation with 4 children, and 4 children ended up diagnosed with PTSD, ADHD, all kinds of stuff, and autism. And it's been a few-year process in getting them the help they need, medical help and everything else. And our state doesn't offer any funding, but I have to struggle with trying to make an income, trying to raise 4 children, keep housing and everything else. So a program or some type of funding out there on that nature would be beneficial. We don't have it in this state, and I do know that other states have it. So I'd be curious in why we don't, or why we're not considering it, or who do we need to talk to in regards to that. But I actually heard about it last year working with the Washington State Coalition Against Domestic Violence. I spoke with them I spoke out in Kennewick in October or September last year. So I had heard about it out there, and I just hadn't heard anything more on it. So I was just kind of thought I'd throw it out and ask.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for being forthcoming and for highlighting that like specific goal. Like, I mean, I will say that I am not super connected to policy advocacy in my work, but if anybody else is aware of that, of any like policy campaign or any work being done towards that specific issue, if anybody wants to speak on that.
Tim, I did want to flag that Marcy did reply in the chat as well. She is all for advocacy on many fronts, not just this working family tax credit. So her email is in the chat as well. I know Marcy, so she'd be happy to talk with you. And it looks like she'll be having a comment now.
Yeah, Diane, I think starting with the Coalition Against Domestic Violence is probably the right place to start. I'm happy to chat more separately. I know some of the folks that are working on kinship caregiver, additional benefits, et cetera. So I'm happy to talk and see if I can get you connected. I'm hesitant to name names because I think the lead person is finally going to retire after many, many, many years of threatening to retire. So I don't want to send you to somebody who's about to retire, but if you want to reach out to me separately, I'm happy to try and get you connected to the right folks on that issue. But I think the Coalition Against Domestic Violence is probably the right place to start.
Awesome, thanks for
Thank
that.
you. I appreciate that. I will. Sorry. Thank you. I will reach out to you.
We are lucky at Seattle King County Coalition on Homelessness to have some fantastic advocacy partners who, I mean, as a coalition, we're able to have much wider reach than as our own group. You know, we have so many people who are so knowledgeable about different facets of the human experience and resource needs, and we're really lucky to be in a space where we can draw upon each other's strengths. So thanks so much, Marcy. And thanks, Diane, for speaking. I recognize that there may be folks on this call that want to ask questions, but may not want to be captured in the recording. We could choose to end the recording and then just chat a little more freely. Why don't we do that? So thanks everyone who's tuning into this recording, and let's end the recording now and speak a little more freely.